Markel had begun crying, and I believe I gave him something to try to comfort him, but it wasn't working. And when his cries persisted, unfortunately, I became agitated, and I shook him, and I also hit him. Um,
We are about to watch the parole hearing for a man who killed his infant stepson back in 2000, sentenced to 60 years in prison with parole eligibility after 40. But because of Act 122, he's here today. But there's an interesting twist to this case, and that is not the first time he has been in Angola. As a matter of fact, 10 years before killing his stepson, he visited his father in 1990 when he was just 10 years old, moments before his father was executed in the electrocution chair. Now, his father was sentenced to death for the killing of a state trooper. It ended up becoming a media frenzy because he was 17 years old when he killed the state trooper. And the law was changed just 5 years later, making it unconstitutional to execute a child. But there's much more to this case than that. What's interesting is that the attorney that represented his father is representing him here today. Now, I'll go through the details of that case at the end, but for now, let's jump in.
The steel door opened. It was just before midnight. He took his final walk down the short corridor inside the Louisiana State Penitentiary. The air was still. The witnesses were already seated, some from the media, others from law enforcement. A few family members of State Trooper Donald Cleveland were there too, watching from behind the thick glass. Dalton's steps were slow, deliberate. His wrists were cuffed, and guards held him on either side. His eyes were puffy, his face was tired, but he did not struggle. He entered the execution chamber just before midnight. The electric chair sitting in the center of the room was waiting for him. Heavy leather straps, copper headgear, and wires already in place. He paused briefly, looked toward the glass where the observers sat, and spoke. He said, referencing the family of the slain trooper, "They say it wasn't for revenge, but it's hard for me to see, to understand. I hope they're happy." Then he added simply, "So I forfeit my life. I give my love to all. God bless." It was a 3-minute speech, quiet, reflective, no anger, just a man about to die. When he finished, he turned toward the chair. He did not resist as guards helped him sit. They began to strap him in, arms, legs, chest. But when the thick leather strap was pulled tight across his forehead, binding his head to the chair, he grimaced. His mouth twitched, his jaw clenched. He tried to relax, but the fear still showed. The black leather hood was pulled over his head. The metal cap was fixed in place. The final checks were done. The room fell silent. And then, at 12 o'clock and 17 minutes Central Daylight Time, the switch was thrown. The electricity surged through his body. His fists clenched tight. His body jolted against the straps. It lasted only seconds, but to those watching, it felt like forever. Then it stopped. A prison doctor stepped forward, checked for signs of life, and then quietly, he spoke the words, "Time of death, 12:17 a.m." Dalton Prejean was dead. The chamber was quiet again. Outside in the dark Louisiana night, there were no cheers, no cries, just silence. Prejean's execution sparked debate across Louisiana and the nation. His case had drawn attention from human rights groups and activists who called his death sentence a miscarriage of justice. Meanwhile, Prejean's family mourned quietly. His mother and son faced a lifetime of loss. haunted by the man they loved, taken too soon. However, years later, that child would face his own dark chapter. In 2001, Dalton Jr. was convicted of manslaughter and child cruelty after the death of his 14-month-old stepson, now serving a 60-year sentence in the very prison where his father died. Dalton Jr.'s life seems trapped in a cycle neither of them could escape, a haunting legacy of violence, trauma, and unanswered questions.
Well, good morning, Mr. Prejean. I'm sorry for the pronunciation there. I'm from Caddo Parish up north. So I get the
Okay,
words wrong, so I apologize for that. The time is 11:06 in the morning. The date is still August the 6th of 2025. We're continuing our meetings, Louisiana Committee on Parole. So we've already introduced ourselves. We're in Baton Rouge, and you are, of course, at Louisiana State Penitentiary. The staff there has already introduced themselves, and we appreciate them hosting us. I see you've got a number of people behind you, and in a few minutes, we'll get them to introduce themselves for purposes of the record. And then we will have 3 people that will speak on your behalf, and we'll get to them in just a little bit. Mr. Prejean, Dalton,
it's
would you,
okay.
I'm gonna massacre that name every time I try it, but what is your DOC number, sir?
My DOC number is 476863.
Okay, thank you. And first, before we get to your supporters and all that, we're going to get you to tell us exactly why you're there, what you did, what you accomplished or learned since you've been there, and why you feel like that you deserve a chance to be paroled. And so we'll hear from you then we'll hear from the institution to find out what kind of fellow you've been since you've been there. And then we will go to your supporters and talk to a couple of them to see what they got to say. And then Ms. Stapleton will do some questions and then we'll vote. Pretty simple process. So why don't you start out, sir, and tell us exactly, excuse me, your attorney is there also. So I wanted to acknowledge Ms. Hogan. We're familiar with her and appreciate you being there too.
Thank
So
you.
why
And Mr. Thomas Gilbo is also here as his attorney, and I think that Mr. Gilbo will be speaking whenever it's time for an attorney to make a comment, but I am also here to answer questions.
Oh, okay. Yes, I see that you're the former attorney.
Yes.
Representative. Okay, all right, we'll get to both of y'all in just a moment then. Mr. Dalton, would you go ahead and tell us just exactly what I asked before? Why are you there and what you've accomplished?
Okay, good morning to all of you, and thank you for this opportunity that's being presented to me. I am incarcerated for taking the life of Markel Anthony Broussard on October 15th of 2001. Oh, God help me. Jesus help me. On October 15th, 2001, I remember returning home from school and my wife needing to get to work, so I told her that I will watch Markel. Shortly after she left, Markel had begun crying, and I believe I gave him something to try to comfort him, but it wasn't working. And when his cries persisted, unfortunately, I became agitated, and I shook him, and I also hit him. I'm sorry. And when he became unresponsive, I immediately called 911 to get some help. I told them what I had done, and they tried to help give me some instructions on doing CPR. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did try. And when they came to give Markel assistance, I willingly left with the detectives. And once I was downtown and they questioned me, they asked me if I wanted a lawyer. I told them no because I was guilty of what I had done, and I just wanted to be forthcoming with what I had done. And doing that interview, I also disclosed to them that on 2 other occasions that I had indeed abused Markel. Uh, my actions against Markel were unjustified. There's no kind of way that I can ever make light of what I've done to Markel. But I do believe that since I've been incarcerated, that I've taken the necessary uh, steps to make sure that I don't hurt another human being, regardless of where my life ends. So one of the first things I had to do, I had to realize that I did indeed have an anger problem. And to be honest, I had to find out where the root to uh, my anger came from. And I discovered that because of the situation with my father was here at Angola. He was executed when I was 10 years old, and my depression had turned inward, and that's what fueled uh, my anger. And even though that's not an excuse for anything that I've done to Markel or anything that I've done to wrong people in the past, I'm only stating this just to show you where my frame of mind was. And in my past, you're going to see that I used a lot of marijuana. I was trying to self medicate to stay calm because I was always agitated about stuff, and the only reason why I hurted people, and all, and the only reason why I did that because I didn't have the tools to address or properly address the reason why I was angry. And since I've been here, I've taken anger management classes, but the ones that were most effective, in addition to anger management classes, was the Thinking for a Change class, in the victim awareness class. I'm actually a facilitator for victim awareness and Thinking for a Change. And in short, the reason why those classes impacted me the most is because it gave me an opportunity to think about what I was thinking about. Obviously, I wasn't doing any thinking at the time I committed the crime against Markel Anthony Broussard, who was my stepson by marriage. Um, and why you should vote for me today, I'm simply asking for mercy, honestly. Um, I've lived a life of service in this community as a pastor, as a reentry social mentor, where I deal with the behavior aspect of younger offenders. Um, Again, I don't want to sound redundant, but a life skill facilitator of a lot of different classes because I wanted people to get the same help that I got when I came into the system. And my purpose for doing so is to make sure that if guys do have an opportunity to be released, that they won't continue in the same pattern of bad thinking that they've done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. We appreciate those comments, and we certainly will keep them in mind when we get to question you in a few minutes. Okay, is the deputy warden prepared to speak? Tell us about this fellow.
Yes, Father. So, Dalton has served approximately 20 years. He's had 4 disciplinary write-ups in those 20 years, with the last one being in 2012 for a Rule 21 He was in an unauthorized area. He was in a dorm.
How many years have you served?
He's a MLB assigned to MAG 3, where he works as a certified mentor for our reentry program, which I can go into those details after I read off all he's accomplished. That's fine. Carpentry, automotive technology, NOBATs, masters in NOBATs, certified tutor, IC3 level 3, certified college tutor, anger management, Malachi Dead, Inside Out Dead, substance abuse, Celebrate Recovery, 100 hours, anger management, victim awareness, victim letter training, moral compass mentor training, trauma healing, certified mentor, and Tyro, which is, I didn't know what that was until just now. It's a leadership training program. And so his Tiger score is low as well. So the leadership training program, I'm sure, comes into play with the reentry program. He's a big part of our reentry program. When the guys intake on Monday morning, we intake them, talk to them, find out what's going on, and then we have the mentors come over and walk them down to their housing area to help transition them to life here at Angola. He also acts as, for lack of words, a big brother to them. He watches over them. He makes sure they stay on the right path. He keeps them out of, he keeps them from doing bad things in prison. Like maybe if they want to get drugs or something, he talks them out of it. They talk to them. They're their counselors. They make sure they get into school and everything. He's also a pastor of one of their fellowships, the Rehabilitators Fellowship. Basically, Dalton helps the new intakes with reentry make good decisions. So I think I don't know what Dalton's plan is, but I would feel just by reentry and the things that he has helped, I think going into society, he would transition well. But I think it would be more of a transition along the lines of helping the youth, maybe in a youth program to keep them from coming to prison. I didn't know that until Dalton said that his father had passed away here. But I think it might be helpful if he was involved in youth programs to try to keep the kids on the right track with the things he's learned here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that insight. Okay, we'll move on to your supporters now. Support the effort. Mr. Kerry Myers. Kerry, would you talk to us about your program, please?
Yes, good morning. Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. And we're here today to support Dalton's petition for parole. I could easily go into Dalton's childhood and a lot of things, but that's what prison is supposed to be, is a place to do two things: incapacitate people, at least, and rehabilitate. And if prison is about rehabilitation, then Dalton is the epitome of rehabilitation. Not only that, he's also the epitome of self-awareness, recognizing where he's come from and where he is now. We've seen very few people who have the accomplishments that Dalton has. Coming into this program, we work with people who have, at various stages, and it's just so rare to see someone like Dalton who's so prepared. We still will provide Dalton with the transitional services that he needs after 23 years of incarceration. He will get the proper mentorship from people who have been in his shoes. He'll get the training that he needs in life skills on the outside. While he's teaching skills on the inside, obviously there's a difference in the transition. Things like financial planning, things like social norms and job skills, they do not translate necessarily the same. So we're prepared to get him hands-on, real-world support in those things. Again, I can sit here and I'm not going to go because I know this is going to be a longer hearing. We just have not seen people like Dalton who is as prepared and has taken advantage of all the options and opportunities for rehabilitation like he has. So we just ask this board to consider those factors today and grant his parole.
Great. Thank you for that. And thank you for what y'all do. We'll move on right now. Before we get to the attorneys, we'll move on to a friend that is there at LSP, Louisiana State Prison, Michael Coates. I believe Mr. Coates wants to say something. Before we do that, Mr. Coach, would you raise your hand, please?
Okay, we can only go.
And there's a fellow seated right next to you, Mr. Coates, and he's got a necklace on. I'm looking at striped, a black stripe thing. Okay, yes, sir. Would you introduce yourself and go down the line and tell us who all is there? Just introduce yourself, please.
Joshua Thibodeau. I'm his first cousin.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Debrianna Green, I'm his daughter. Okay. Sheila Williams, I'm his aunt and his godmother.
Michael Palmer, and I'm a friend of his.
Bernadette Prejean Williams, I'm his mother.
Yes, sir.
Yusuf Gardner, I'm his brother.
Sharon Easton Pete, I'm his sister-in-law.
Jessica Garrick, his cousin.
Lawrence Garrick, his uncle.
Molly Gilbo, a friend.
Sidney Anderson, a friend.
Angie Bruno, a friend.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And let's see, and got some folks here at headquarters. Your aunt Erica Williams is here, and William Marcus Jr. from the First Presbyterian Church is here. Is that correct? Okay, and they're here. Just wanted you to know that. And okay, now it's time for Mr. Michael Coates. Tell us about your friend there.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor for me to sit before this honorable board. Dalton and I have been friends for a little over 20 years, and we've gotten to know each other, learn each other. We've cried together, we've laughed together. I watched him grow. I watched him mature to be the young man that he is today. We attended the Bible college together. We graduated together. We became tutors at the Bible college, and we were members of the same church, the Rehabilitators. Dalton was a minister on staff, and as he began to grow and mature, he became the assistant pastor under me. And when I left Angola, Dalton became senior pastor of the Rehabilitators. And since that time, he's done an outstanding job in leading that congregation. He's one of the most humble people I've ever met in my life. And when I say we've cried together, we've talked about the mistakes he's made in the past. He's opened up to me, and we just sat there and I listened, and I realized that this young man was broken inwardly because of the things that he did in the past. But at the same time, I made him realize that he had to continue to move forward. That he did. And he's still moving forward. And society would be greatly enhanced if Dalton Prejean was offered the opportunity or given the opportunity today to move into the free society. It would be a travesty that he would have to spend any longer behind closed bars. So I'm here today as his friend, as a mentor to him, and I feel like he's my son in many ways because we've been together for so long. But I know personally that he would be a great asset to whatever community or wherever he should decide to live. He would be a great asset to that community with the kids, with people who need help, because he's been there. He's, as the old folks say, he's did that and done that. He knows all the mistakes. So only thing he can do now is move forward. So I'm asking this honorable board to please consider giving Dalton Prejean his freedom today. And thank you.
Okay, thank you for those words. You're a good friend. Okay, we'll turn it over to Ms. Hogan. Do you want to speak first? Or does Mr.
No.
Gill-
I'll let Mr. Gilbo speak. Mr. Prater, thanks for asking.
Can you see me?
Sir, can.
All right, I'm Thomas Gilbo, Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm a retired criminal defense attorney, 54 years of practice. I represented Dalton Prejean senior when he took the life of the state trooper back in 1977. The trial was moved to Monroe. He was convicted. He was sentenced to death. At the time he shot the trooper, he was 17 years old. I appealed this case and later had help with out-of-state lawyers. I stayed on the case for 13 years. I was at Dalton's execution along with Nancy Goodwin, his spiritual advisor, because he asked us to be there.
Outside the prison, pressure continued to mount. Hundreds of people had written letters to the governor asking for mercy. Reporters waited for updates. But inside, Dalton had entered a space of stillness. He no longer believed clemency was coming. By late afternoon, he had stopped talking about hope. He spoke instead about the meaning of his life and whether any of it had mattered. He knew that to the state he was little more than a case number. By 6 o'clock, the sun had begun to dip low over Angola's distant treetops, casting long shadows across the prison yard. Inside, the atmosphere remained thick and still. The day was almost gone. And for Dalton Prejean, so was time. His last meal had arrived. On the tray, a seafood platter, fried shrimp, catfish, and hush puppies. On the side, a bottle of orange soda. He had chosen it himself. A taste from home, perhaps. A simple indulgence at the edge of the unknown. There were no visitors now, no conversations. Just Dalton seated alone at a small metal table inside the death watch area.
5 years after Dalton was executed, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that you could not execute someone under the age of 18. So it's a shame that Dalton lost his life at that time because he was 17. But when he was 30 years old, when they executed, I've known Dalton Jr. since he was born. We called him DJ. I am also his godfather, along with Sheila. And he bears a middle name of Thomas. And he's down to Dalton Thomas Prejean Jr. And when I told his father, I said, you can't do that, Dalton, because you don't have a Thomas in your name. He said, well, Mr. Gilbo, that's just the way it is. And you do have a Thomas in your name. Dalton, I was able to take DJ, as we call him, to visit with his mother, Bernadette, to visit Dalton on death row. The warden then, I believe it was Warden Blackburn, allowed us to do that. And many times I took them to Angola and we got into a cell, the three of us, and Dalton would hold his 10-year-old or 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old son in his lap and was really thrilled. They had a deep bond between them. We won the pardon board hearing and we thought we were going to get a green light there. That didn't happen. When the execution date was set, DJ had to line up with the rest of the family to tell Dalton goodbye. That is the saddest time of all in an execution. When the loved ones are told, okay, line up, you got 5 minutes, tell them goodbye. And when it came to those two, it was incredible, it was hard. We got through the execution. DJ was very much impacted by it because he was teased a lot by children at school. They told him, your daddy fried like a chicken. They told him fire came out of his ears. And Nancy Goodwin and I would have to calm him down and say that wasn't true. But he suffered a lot when his father passed. He had a grandfather, Nelson Garrett. Nelson Garrett would have been the man that could have turned Dalton's life around because he was a male figure that DJ was taking as a second father. I don't know if you can see this picture or not. This is me and DJ when he was 11 years old, and Nelson Garrett got him to be the king of the children's Mardi Gras. And he was the sweetest looking, most precious little boy. 2 years later, Nelson Garrett died of a heart attack. And that's when Dalton went off the rails. From then on, he did not have a male in his life I fought myself many times that I wasn't there for him more, but I was very much wrapped up in my criminal trial practice at that time. And I'm sorry I wasn't there more for you, more on that, DJ. But he was an angry man when he went to prison. He has served 23 years and 10 months today. He has turned into an incredible human being. His portfolio has 127 certificates in it. I don't think anyone in Angola has gotten more certificates or is more rehabilitated than Dalton. I have personally seen him change as a human being. I followed him all of his life, all the time through prison. My wife and I have followed DJ, spoke to him. He is a totally changed human being. Everything that was said about him earlier is true. It's time for him to go out in the world and do good. I know if you grant the parole, he has an opportunity to work at a prison ministry in Parchment Prison, Mississippi, and would be doing similar work with inmates and what have you. So I hope and pray that you all do that. I want to thank each one of you for the time you give to this board and the service that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those heartfelt remarks. We appreciate that. Take them into consideration. Ms. Hogan?
The only thing I would like to add, Mr. Prater, I don't want to say the same thing and be redundant, but I would just point out that, as indicated by Mr. Gilbo, Mr. Prejean's rehabilitation began, when he came to prison with 60 years to serve before he was parole eligible. Act 122 was only passed a couple years ago. So all of these accomplishments and all of his rehabilitation is genuine. It was the work of him working on himself and giving back and living a life of service to others, which has included mission trips to other prisons, as Warden Oliver spoke, rehabilitating and working, being a core member of the reentry program, getting a master's degree from the Bible College. So for all of these reasons, we'd ask the board to vote in favor of his parole.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hogan. We appreciate that. I think that is all of the speakers that are going to be speaking in favor. There are none that are signed up to speak in opposition. Ms. Stapleton, would you begin the questioning, please?
Dalton, everything you talked about has been exemplary. You were talking about the incident, it ended up being a murder that day.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, it was.
A few months ago. And then that couple times before then, you had lost your temper. And
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
We have these cases in front of us. The neurosurgeon said that there was bruising on the baby's head and in the facial area.
Yes, ma'am.
Brain shaking caused Markel's death. Said there was a tooth knocked out and bleeding from the nose area, retinal hemorrhaging, bruising on the left pelvis. And there was no chance of Markel living without life support when he got to Lafayette. You have, incredible support from really everybody. And I read also about your certificates, over 100, like 20 something certificates. Law enforcement entirely, they oppose this. You've served, like you said, almost 23 years of a 60-year sentence. So we're talking about 1/3. And is there anything more you'd like to say to me about that would help you with this?
Thank you, Miss Stapleton. Jesus help me. I'm not at a loss for words. I'm actually still hurt by the things that I've done to Markel. And as I have disclosed to the detectives that there were instances where I did admit that I did hit him, and I did hit him in the head, and I did hit him in the face, and there were times that I did hit him in the stomach area. What was going through my mind at the time? Ma'am, I have no idea. All I know is that I was agitated, and that was the way that I responded. At that time in my life, I smoked a lot of weed and stuff just to keep me calm, but that is not an excuse for anything that I've done to anyone, especially Markel. I actually love Markel. And he and I had a great relationship. I just had a problem dealing with my own anger issues. But since I've been in this situation, I've owned everything I've did. Matter of fact, I've owned everything I did from the day that I've did it. I've never shied away from anything that I've did. I'm the one who gave the detectives 2 confessions. I I I I don't know what else to do but to take ownership, and is exactly what I've done. And my rehabilitation all started with,
You've been
ma'am.
exemplary. You've been very exemplary in that. I mean,
Yeah.
record shows that. And then also your support. I don't know how I don't know how Markel's family, the mother, and maybe aunts and uncles are going. You were going to say something, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
That's-
Mr. Gilbo has been in contact with Markel's father at least months ago, and I believe that he had written a letter.
There should be a letter in your file from Mr. Williams, the father of Markel, saying that he is in favor of Dalton being granted parole. That should definitely be in your file.
Mm.
But I can say that he told me that, and I have his.
Yeah. Okay, they read it. I missed it. Yeah, they've read it, so that's good.
Okay.
I was
Okay,
wondering
thank you.
about that, the other side of the story.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions.
That's
I'd like to ask to go into executive
That's a
session.
good idea.
We have a motion for executive session.
Second,
Okay,
Prayer,
yes.
Satan,
yes.
yes.
Okay, we'll be in executive session in just a few minutes. We'll step to the back. Y'all can stay seated in here. We have a motion to go back into regular session from executive session.
I'll make the motion.
Got a motion and a second. Would you please call roll and add?
Prayer,
Yes.
Satan,
Yes.
Mandoo.
Okay, we're back into regular session now, and I think have we asked all the questions?
That's it. I don't have
That
any
you
more.
have? And have you, Ms. Ledoux, any questions? Comments, anything? Okay, I think we've, I have one question. How
Yes,
many times did you, and how many other occasions did you injure this baby?
On the 2 occasions that I did admit to, I don't believe that they had like other specific days, but I did disclose to the detective. I was very honest with them that at few times that when I got agitated that I did indeed abuse and hit Markel, and I think they only charged me twice, but I did hit Markel. It wasn't an ongoing thing, but nevertheless I did abuse and hit Markel Anthony Broussard.
Thank you for your honesty. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
Ms. Stephen, I think it's time to vote.
Yes. Mr. Prejean, you know, really, you've done a great job for the time you've been in jail, in prison and everything like that. You're on the right path to get your life in order, and I think you've done that. But we have a dead child, and this baby was brutalized. So based upon strong law enforcement opposition, all of them are opposed, and I do have victim opposition, and you served about a third of your sentence. I'm going to deny your requests today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Prejean, my vote in no way mitigates the severity of this crime. You have admitted it. We all understand. I do not believe that you're a threat to public safety. I think you've done exceptional rehabilitation
amazing conduct, and you have stable plans. My vote today is to grant parole.
Okay, you need a
Ask
unanimous.
the question. Have a,
Yeah.
ask a question.
Well,
What
no,
business
we're
vote?
voting. We're voting now, sir, and we appreciate that, but we're in the process of voting. So we have one vote to deny, one vote to grant. You need a unanimous from the jury where the law is from us, where the law is now, and you have not reached that. But so that you will know, my vote would have also been to deny because it wasn't just one occasion. But I think that who knows what my vote will be in a few years. Who knows? Because I think that you are a model inmate. And please reach inside yourself and continue with the behavior that you're showing right now. So as of 11:48 this morning, your parole request has been denied. Thank you.
And they denied. And where do I start with this case? Now, we have a lot of information to go over. Thank you so much, Lady Holly, for pulling it. I watched another documentary done, which Lady Holly found. I'll put a link to it in the description, but I couldn't share it because of, I don't know, a copyright infringement thing that came up. Although it's a whole different subject. I don't know how that's copyright, but where they interviewed him in prison before he had parole opportunity, and it was quite interesting to see his insight of Angola. He said that he was expecting there, to quote him, see blood all over the place, but what he saw were people in the yard with baseball bats playing baseball without any COs around, and then not killing each other. And he was able to, at this point, realize that he would devote his life to improving himself and being better and to change. And he did do that. If you look at what he's done in prison, I mean, we have seen so many parole hearings that we know we can identify someone who truly does try to find change and repentance and to make themselves better. And he did all of this before Act 122 came about. We often see after Act 122, the legislation passed just like in 2021, I think, which said anyone who's over the age of 40 and served 20 years of their sentence, or 45 and served 20 years of their sentence, can all of a sudden magic poof get parole eligibility. And that, of course, is because they wanted to bring down their costs of an aging prison, blah blah blah. It's a topic for a different day. But even with all that being said, there was so much wrong with the interview that I just didn't like. The idea, again, think about this. This is a man who brutally did the unimaginable to his 14-month-old stepson. And by the way, if you want to get any more insight, the mother of the stepson who he killed stayed with him for 2 more years. If that tells you all you need to know about the mother, okay? Now, and why there's not opposition and only by law enforcement, the DA, how they couldn't oppose, I have no idea. But let me look, it wasn't like he just admitted to it. It's not so simple. And then we'll talk about his father and the situation of that. There was more gaslighting done there too. But Judge Prejean said, okay, so a Lafayette man who told investigators that he lost it while punching and shaking his 14-month-old stepson is mentally competent to stand trial in the child's death, a judge ruled. And isn't it interesting that he tried to pull one that his father tried to pull too? Dalton Joseph Jr., 22, the son of the last man executed for killing Lafayette Parish, faces life in prison if convicted in second-degree murder on October 15th. He entered a plea of not guilty for reason of insanity immediately after the ruling Thursday, which addressed only his mental capacity to assist in defense attorney. The attorney, Thomas Gilbu, had asked in April that his client receive a mental evaluation to determine his competency to stand trial. The attorney and Prejean refused to talk to him about the case. and that the man's mental state appeared to be deteriorating. 2 doctors were appointed to examine him, and isn't that interesting? Totally competent here, right? Prejean is accused of punching, stomping, and violently shaking Broussard after the baby would not stop crying. I lost it while I was shaking him, he told one of the doctors who evaluated him. And now listen to this. In statements Prejean gave to investigators, he said he was acting on weird impulses. I've had a constant battle in my head between what is right and what is wrong. Prejean also told detectives that he had slapped and punched. Remember, this is 14-month-old. How big is this man? This man's the biggest man in that room. And you're punching and you're stomping. Just think about that again for a second. He told detectives that he had slapped and punched his stepson in the past and sometimes choked when he would not stop crying. Sheriff's Office Detectives Thomas Sith testified Thursday that Prejean was cooperative with the investigation and appeared very concerned about the child's welfare. He said that Prejean was informed that the child had lost brain activity and began to break down and cry before giving a second confession. He asked me, "Do you mind if I get my knees and tell you this?" He said that the detective testified in a hearing to determine the statement made by Prejean would be suppressed. He argued, his attorney argued that the detective would have advised Prejean of the rights before he gave a statement while on his knees, because the man was obviously distraught and may not have understood what he was saying or doing. The detective adjusted Prejean advised him of his rights a few hours earlier. He said, "Oh, you should have advised him again." Okay, good luck with that. Prejean's father, Senior, was executed on May 19th. Okay, so now, you might say what's interesting about this case is maybe he does really have empathy. I can't, maybe he really does regret it, and he with his, he has this words impulses in his head that he spoke about. But here's the thing. This is what is so interesting about this case. For those of you who are saying, let him out, it's not going to hurt anyone again. Clearly something was wrong, but he's worked on himself. He's done better. All of that. All of you, what you can do, all you have to do is look at his father. His father was locked up for killing a taxi driver before he murdered the state trooper. They don't tell you this in the documentary, by the way, that I watched done by CNBC. It seems that a lot of people like to forget to mention this fact that when they executed him, it was after he was already given a second chance, after he was released after murdering a taxi driver. So if you want to say give this man a second chance, what's he going to do? You only need to look back to his father, who was given a second chance and then murdered a state trooper. And it really is fascinating to see that these articles that I went to look in, they don't mention the first murder because it just doesn't flow right. It doesn't sound good. It doesn't go to the story they're trying to say about a poor boy who shot the state trooper. I found that fascinating when I saw this. And here it is. Look at this. In 1974, Dalton was arrested for the murder of John Doucette, a taxi driver. In a later statement about the incident, Dalton said that he and 2 friends, one of whom had a gun, called a cab with the intention of robbing the driver. They directed the driver to a quiet corner of town, persuaded him to stop while they searched for an address. Dalton insisted on taking the gun from his companion because the other youth appeared to be nervous. Dalton approached the driver and, believing that the driver was reaching for a gun of his own, fired twice and began running. While fleeing, he told passerbys to call an ambulance. Dalton later turned himself in and admitted to killing the driver. He was tried as a juvenile, found delinquent in the first-degree murder, and admitted to the Louisiana Training Institute. A psychiatric evaluation of Dalton was performed in 1974, which is, the same year he murdered him, was found to be intellectually limited or to have very poor judgment. Dalton was diagnosed as having borderline mental, I know this is not a politically correct word, and it was questionable if he knew the difference between right and wrong. The psychiatrist considered the boy to be a definite danger to himself and others, um, and his dream content suggested it's a matter of accident that the cab driver was killed rather than the boy being killed. He is equally likely to get himself killed in the near future. The psychiatrist therefore recommended that a lengthy confinement, followed by a transfer to permanent facility. So this psychiatrist, you gotta lock him up forever. The juvenile courts had jurisdiction, I said it right, over the defendant until he was 21. The doctors recommended that he would have served to keep Prejean confined until December of 1980, which would have been 10 years or 6 years. 6 years. Now, for some reason, 2 years later in 1976, another doctor, that's why you got to love these PhDs. And that's the thing. You can put probably 10 doctors in a room with this guy and get 10 different evaluations. I've always had a problem with it. And I always think it depends who's paying that doctor, who is setting up the appointment. That's the result you'll get. Just follow that and you'll know what the result will be before it even happens. So in 1976, however, the doctor conducted a psychiatric evaluation of the defendant and recommended that he be discharged. He concluded that the defendant's values had changed, but cautioned that suitable conditions should be imposed to be sure that he had adequate supervision and is going to live in a fairly stable environment. The doctor also suggested that a fairly rigid probation requirement be imposed. On December 10, 1976, Prejean was released into the custody of his aunt in Houston without any probation requirements. So that's where he can still go sleep at night, right? The doctor, because clearly they didn't listen to his suggestion, they just released him. Within 7 months, he murdered the state trooper. So again, I bring this up for a few. One is, when people are saying, "Oh, you executed him," and this, it's like, also keep in mind this was his second murder. I couldn't find it mentioned in the other articles because, again, and that just pissed me off. But again, I come back to my point. If you're making the argument, oh, just let him out. Why keep him locked up? He's been punished enough, to quote that lady from the Illinois Parole Project. If you don't know, we covered this hearing on Mandoo Channel 2, where we cover Illinois. And she was saying, release this murderer who murdered 2 people. He's been punished enough. And it's like, it's not always about punishment, even if you want to put a number of years on the life of an infant child, but it is still about protection. His father was given a chance to murder someone. Who's to say he won't do the same thing? Now, you could say, the Mandoo, that's ridiculous. But when you read the article, even when he said he said he was fighting voices in his head. It's kind of scary stuff. But I hear you. You can go back to his criminal record and say, man, this guy is outstanding. He really, from day one, has done things that is remarkable. But not this parole board. I don't think they want the media attention. I don't think they want the news. Keep in mind, the governor handpicks them. The governor is on a crusade to be tough on crime, and this wouldn't be a good look. This would make the news headlines. And it could be even just for that reason they said no. So he's got to keep doing what he's doing. You tell me, what do you think? Do you think that he should have gotten out? This was a good move. Put media aside, put agendas aside. Had he earned the right to get out? It's a good debate. But as Miss Stapleton said, you think about that poor defenseless baby, and I can't wrap my mind around the kind of evil. We couldn't do that to a street dog, to a squirrel, to even like a rodent, to beat and strangle like most people, and now to a baby, an infant, your stepson. I just can't. I can't go there. And it's a kind of evil that I can't forgive something like that. And with that, I'll let you go.
You're on the right path to get your life in order, and I think you've done that. But we have a dead child, and it was and this baby was brutalized.